The Feast of Christ the King is optional as a feast on the Episcopal Church's calendar. But regardless of whether it is called a feast or not, we have the same readings. And the readings say a lot about who God is and who we are called to be as followers of God. The Gospel in particular is instructive in this. We have this feast on our calendars because it joined the Roman Catholic calendar in the early 20th century. The Pope at the time, while not prone to all of the abuses of the popes of the Middle Ages and Renaissance, did see the role of the Pope as being an earthly king in addition to being a spiritual leader. The Pope also was a believer in the divine right of kings and was deeply disturbed by the American experiment and the collapse of monarchies in Europe. Now, to be fair, in Germany and Italy, the fall of the monarchies was followed by the rise of fascism, and in Russia, by the Soviet Union. So the downfall of the monarchies was not a universal good for the common people. But the monarchies themselves had been abusive of their people and had, as a result, led to countless senseless deaths of soldiers and civilians alike. So when the Pope created his feast celebrating Christ the King, the meaning was not what he intended. Rather than drawing justification for the notion of the divine right of kings, the feast day draws attention to the contrast between the reign of Jesus and an earthly king. Rather than being about conspicuous consumption and the lack of accountability in the face of an increasingly desperate population, for Christ, being a king is about sacrifice for the people. The feast day's readings point not to Jesus enthroned in heaven, judging between the goats and the sheep, surrounded by choirs of angels and obedient multitudes while living in splendor, but rather to Jesus dying naked and physically broken on a cross, deserted by all but his most ardent supporters and friends, and flanked by two criminals. And not to the blessing of God upon the kings of ancient Judea and Israel, but to the repudiation of these kings by the prophet Jeremiah for the abuse and scattering of the people they were meant to serve and protect. This feast day that was meant to provide justification for the consolidation of temporal and religious power and wealth in the hands of a small elite instead serves as a warning for those who would lead God's people. And rather than being an endorsement for any form of human governance, this feast day serves as a repudiation of all forms of governance that allow an elite to consolidate their wealth and power and to deny righteousness and justice to their people. Rather than being a day to look with approval upon a monarch or a dictator as being the image of Jesus here on earth, by virtue of their position, this is a day in which our scriptures remind us that no leader is worthy of our fellowship unless they become the image of Jesus, willing to humble themselves even to the point of the cross for their people. Amen.